The lies of humanity. Humans are a race of liars. Za slurred loudly as he sat down his bottle of heavy vapors. He itched his nose for a moment with his offhand claw, trying to get the vapors to push deep, before he leaned back and sighed contentedly, a pale puff of yellow leaving his mouth. If their mouths are moving, they're lying. A quiet clattering of teeth in amusement arose from around the table, as some of the other snacks inhaled their own vapors in solidarity. Mutterings of raw deals, poor sportsmanship, and hints at outlandish stories fluttered around the table as the group sat their own bottles back down. One or two of the group, younger hatchmates, shuffled nervously, unsure of how to join in on the conversation. The remainder kept still. I was on a trade mission, Za muttered, leaning back forward to look at the rest of the table. Headed to the Vasily roundabout. A good trade deal, I was told by the human who organized it. He took another inhale of his vapors before setting it back down. I was supposed to be trading for 400 tail lengths of processed Gondolian fibers. A whistle arose from one of the others around the table, causing Za to point at the other snacked, shouting, I know, 400 tail lengths. Guaranteed to have been sheared off a live one. Good grade. Nice payday. So, what happened? One of the others asked. Well, Sixt, I will tell you, muttered Za as he leaned forward conspiratorially. It was alpaca. A roar arose from around the table as the other snakes shouted and pounded on the table in annoyance and anger at their brood brother's mistreatment. I know, shouted Za. A bunch of liars. Tried to fake me out with a substitute, a human substitute. What did you do? Asked Sicht. Za breathed in another noseful of vapors and quickly exhaled the yellow haze in annoyance, wasting the boost to his high. I refused the trade, took my money, and went back home. He went to take another deep inhale, but stopped when he noticed the bottle was empty. He waved to the Kuri manning the bar for another before sighing. Ended up having to make some bad trades for the next several moon cycles just to make back the money I had lost. You know they venerate their liars, right? Offered up Rhys, who was sitting off to Za's left. All eyes turned to look at Rhys, who flicked his tongue in a sign of dismissal. I studied their histories. Some of their greatest heroes are criminals and liars. Like who? Asked Lara. One of their old tribes had a guy named Caesar. Good snicked name, whispered Sars. Right, agreed Rhys. Anyway, he was part of a warrior tribe where great honors could be bestowed for righteous defense of the homelands. However, his tribe was at peace. So how could he get these honors? No, whispered several at the table. Yes, said Rhys. He went up to the edge of his tribal lands and waited. Then, when some refugees, requested access to pass through, he slaughtered them. Rhys made a stabbing motion with his hands. Human killing human, one at a time with knives, not with large weapons. It was his and his soldiers' word against a dead humans, so he called it an invasion. Tails and tongues twitched nervously as the implications of this set in. A war of conquest based upon lies. Slaughter in the thousands based solely on one human's word. It was unimaginable. Where were his nestmates to counter his word? Where were the righteous laws to prevent this from happening? Where were the governing officials to put a stop to him? Later, his people made him a god, Rhys added, before taking a casual sniff of his vapors. An entire race of liars, hissed Sars venomously, which set off a chain reaction of all the others muttering curses and condemnations of the entire human race. The rumblings from earlier became full stories, recounting all the ways in which humans had personally lied to each of them. Promises of divine justice, of good deals, of conquests, of bumps in the night, and of chances that, if taken, would pay off. Finally, Tsar noticed that one of their table, an older sneak named Lisri, had not joined in on the conversation. He quieted everyone else down before motioning towards Lisri. "Lisri, you have worked with humans more than any of us. Surely you must have better stories than all of this sosnak. What is the worst lie a human has ever told you?" Lisri had been sitting still, nursing a bottle of vapors that was still mostly full. He took a brief sniff before setting it back down, letting the green vapor slowly ooze back out of his nostrils. After he had finished breathing, he said quietly but clearly, "Go. I'm right behind you." A few quiet jaw clicks of half-hearted amusement rippled through the group as some attempted to laugh, but their tail twitching easily gave away the nervous energy that had settled over the table. Eyes moved about, looking from snicked to snicked, each of them trying to figure out what joke they were missing. Finally, Tsar spoke up. "I'm not sure we understand." "The worst lie." "That was the worst lie," Lisri said before repeating, "Go. I'm right behind you." He looked around the room, taking in the questions and gazes, before finally sighing heavily. "All right," he finally said to all the silent questions. He breathed in some more vapors before beginning his story. "This was many moon cycles ago. I worked in a mining station in the Sitali sector. They had a gas giant there, rich in H3, and were more than happy to sell the mineral rights to the highest bidder. My firm won, and so the mining and processing plants were set up in orbit. Very normal, very ordinary. I had a friend there, a human, named Luis." He paused and chuckled quietly to himself for a moment before sharply breathing in. "I hope he wouldn't mind me calling him a friend." He looked at the confusion on the other Snicks' faces. Human friendship is very nebulous. The word has a different meaning depending on who says it. To some, a friend is like a brood cousin. Someone you see occasionally, but you don't have a strong attachment. You talk, crack jokes, but never discuss serious matters. To others, a friend is like a combination between a broodmate and a bloodmate. "Impossible," hissed Sars. "A human willing to offer a life for life. Yet it is true," said Lisri, "and I would hope that Luis considered us this, but..." His tail twitched for a moment in contemplation before he continued. "Luis and I did not start off on speaking terms. I was aware of the reputation of his species, and so I did my best to avoid them. However, as our environmental needs are similar, our kind were forced to share a dormitory." Lisri took another inhale of his vapors before setting the bottle down. He held the vapor in his lungs, and as he spoke it slowly leaked out of his nose and mouth in a fine green mist. "Being an H3 refinery, we were a popular target. Sure, we had a defense force, but as you all know, bombardments can take hours. Locked in the dormitories, there was little else to do, so Luis tried to teach myself, and some of the other inhabitants, games, namely poker. I can see by some of your reactions you already know this game," Lisri said, quietly clacking his teeth in amusement. "A decidedly human game. A game built on deception and money. To the victor go the spoils and all that nonsense," Lisri added with a sigh. "I was terrible at it. I lost so much of my money to Luis, but he always returned it at the end of the game. That was just for fun. He would say, 'Soon we'll play a real game.'" "He returned your money?" Za asked, incredulous. "He did, but I doubt it was out of charity," Lisri said, twitching his tail dismissively. "If I lost all my money, I would be out. There would be no more game then." "Ah, it was to stay entertained then," offered Rhys. "Most likely," agreed Lisri. "I think he just enjoyed the company." Many of the other species can't talk without translators, which are notorious for inaccuracies, but our mouths make enough of the same sounds that, once the language is learned, you can just talk. Lisri paused then, swirling his bottle of vapors in his offhand while staring into them, the roiling green gas rolling over itself like water. The first time he saved my life, I expected a call of blood debts, and perhaps, in a way, he did. "You'll do the same for me next time, right?" was all he offered. Lisri took a deep inhale before exhaling all of it in one hurried snort. Perhaps that was his blood debt. Perhaps he merely didn't want to lose his poker partner. I don't know. Life continued like that for a time. It's a dangerous job, mining and refining H3. We had many near misses with dangerous elements, cascading refineries, and other issues that come from the mining process. I saved his life once, too. That night, I also won a game of poker for the first time. Lisri puffed out his dewlap for a brief moment before retracting it. He told me we could play for real after that. It was a good day. This was not all some sort of bonding ritual, asked Lara. To my knowledge, no, answered Lisri. But I think that was when we became friends. We requested shifts together. We ate together. And most importantly, we talked. I learned a lot about humanity during that time. But the lie, prodded Sars. "Ah," said Lisri quietly. "Yes, please forgive an old snicked their memories." He leaned his head back and stared at the ceiling. It started out as a normal day, as far as ones with bombardments went. We hunkered down and waited until the entire station shook. Luis and I had been involved in a very heated game of poker when he looked at me saying, "That wasn't right." I agreed. Lisri looked back at the table. We bypassed the locks and snuck out, heading towards the command station through some of the back tunnels and access ways. I am glad that Luis had that kind of foresight, because at one point we passed by heavily armored troops, and blood, so much blood, just outside, in the hallways. Lisri took another inhale of vapors and exhaled slowly. It was the Black Lance. A hiss and deep intake of breath across the room told Lisri he didn't have to waste too much time explaining them. So he pushed on. Their own refineries had apparently been retaken by peacekeepers, and so they needed a new one. A better one. In a more isolated arm of the galaxy, Luis told me we had to make it to the command center. He had an idea to save some lives. I followed, confident in his ideas, as they had saved both our lives numerous times. Lisri paused and twitched his tail nervously before continuing. There were 2 of them in the command center. We had plasma torches. They had plasma guns. It was brutal. Like opening a can of srash in a Lizariti nest. A few nervous glances moved about the table. Everyone had always wondered where the scars on Lisri's dewlap came from, and it seems that now they knew. Lisri, either ignorant or unconcerned by the glances, pushed on. We knew we had limited time then. They had managed to get out radio calls, and we already knew they were executing everyone they found. We had just started up the process for putting out the red alerts and locking down passageways to allow some of the other miners to escape, when we heard them coming. Lisri fell silent again, and remained that way for several long minutes. The attention at the table was complete, and no one dared interrupt at this point in the story. Finally, Lisri seemed to get a hold of himself before he quietly said, "That is when Luis said, 'Go. I'm right behind you.'" Green snot began dripping from Lisri's nose, causing him to furiously wipe it away. I ran, like a coward. But he said he was right behind me. We were friends. Humans certainly don't lie to their friends, right? No one dared move, or even speak, as Lisri struggled to get his snot under control. He wiped it away again and again before it finally slowed, and then stopped altogether. He took a deep inhale of his vapors, seemingly unconcerned with the potential side effects. and pressed on. I learned a lot about humanity that day. See, humans lie to protect what they hold dear. Nervous murmurs arose from his listeners, but he pushed on. It's true. Sometimes that lie is to protect vanity, or wealth, or power, but other times that lie is to protect something more precious. Humans have lies about a clawed red man who delivers presents to egglings, but that is a lie to protect their egglings' sense of wonder, Lisri said. Or they have lies about what happens after death, but that is to provide comfort or solace to those who are mourning and in grief. Humans don't have broodmates like snikt do. They are born alone and grow alone. There have only strangers and the old to share the struggles with, and so lies bring them comfort. Their lies wrap them in security and safety, and it allows them to explain and understand their surroundings, or even guard themselves against unwanted conflicts. Our worlds are similar, both full of predators and poison, but the humans have no sharp teeth, no claws, and no colored scales to hide. They feel fear like prey, but hunt like predators. They fought for their right to survive, and they did it through lies. Lies to prevent emotional outburst and keep the tribe intact. Lies to keep the children from running off and accidentally alerting a predator, or even lies to create amusement and pass the time. I don't understand, said Za, interrupting briefly. They lie to ensure their own safety. Yes, said Lisri. The darkness to them held horror. The loss of a single eggling was devastating to their tribes, as it could take 4 full moon cycles before another could be born. Their brood mothers frequently died during the birthing process, and so, for the sake of the tribe, they did not have the luxury of truth. They could not tell the egglings the truth of the darkness like ours did, because the darkness to them held a fear they couldn't escape. So they invented lies and stories to tell the egglings about the power of this darkness, so they would be afraid and be careful, and in that caution, the tribe would live. That hasn't stopped. Even now, the humans fear the darkness. They fear the loss of self, and thus their tribe, if they stray too deeply into it. And the greatest darkness, the humans fear, is the last one. That, I think, is why Luis lied. He lied because his species spends their entire lives looking into that final darkness, and he wanted to go into it alone, just like how he was born. He lied so that I would leave and save the others, so he could go on his final journey, knowing his lie would protect future tribes. He lied to protect. Lisri inhaled the last of his vapors and sat the bottle back down. He looked at the group around him, but none met his gaze. Humans have many lies. Some are malicious, but many are just their way. They are experiencing the world the only way they know how. His gaze turned to Hriis, who looked away. That Caesar you so venomously condemned, that humans' leaders were venom-born, their venom sacs so full they turned it on their own tribe for amusement. This human wrote laws, scale-born laws that protected and uplifted their skin-born, their weakest. He did it the only way he knew how, by lying to the venomous, so that they would grant him the power to protect. Then, when they killed him, those same skin-born rose in his defense and shackled their rulers the only way they could. Deification. The venom-born were now forever under the watchful eyes of the skin-born guardian, because none of them would challenge a god. About that time, the door to the bar swung in, and a group of humans came in, loudly joking and bragging about their hauls for the day, while shouting out drink orders. Lisri stood and waved to them, causing them to wave back excitedly. He looked back at the table of snikt. If you will excuse me, my friends are here. He then pulled a deck of cards out of the pouch on his waist and waved it towards the humans as he approached. They cheered, clapped him on the back, and offered him a chair and a bottle of green heavy vapors. The other table remained quiet for some time.